2026 St. Mary's City Commission regular meeting. We'll start with appropriation ordinance 1288. Which seems to have just health insurance things on it. Any questions or discussions on that? And I'd take a motion to approve appropriation ordinance 1288 as presented.
I would move to approve appropriation ordinance 1288 as presented.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor vote aye.
Aye.
And there are none opposed, so that's approved. Thank you. Proposed minutes from last meeting. Good? Yep, those are approved. Thank you. And do we have anything to add to the agenda?
It's not listed on the.
Oh, I did send out
Yeah,
even that.
it's not on the blue sheet, but there was an email an hour or two ago.
About,
There's a T-Mobile grant we've discussed in a
okay,
little bit more detail.
we'll add that. Aye. T-Mobile grant. Okay. So the first item on the agenda is resolution 0126, waive GAAP, generally accepted or accounting practices.
Principles,
This is something that we do annually, and I know that Maurice asked our accountant about whether or not we want to consider moving from a cash, what's it called?
well, so Gerhard asked, and I then
Cash
asked
to
our
accrual basis.
auditor.
Yeah.
So he had his response in front of you, you did cover it if you want to.
Well, the basic answer from Russell is Shipley, it's not worth it. So I don't know if you saw any of this or if you had any questions, but it's we do sort of real life checkbook accounting here, and it seems like we've been doing this. I have no problem with it, but if you had any questions, or we could discuss it. So if there's no further discussion, then I would certainly entertain a motion to adopt resolution 0126 waiving the GAAP requirement, or it's called GAAP waiver.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, I move we approve resolution number 01-26, waiving the gap.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor vote aye.
Aye.
And there are none opposed, so we will adopt, approve resolution 0126. The next item on the agenda, the city's 10-year plan, kind of follow on discussion from last time, I think. And we're just keeping it on. Do you want to have an update on that, Francis, or comment? We're referring to these handouts at this point.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. So there is a print-off that Lucy requested printed off. Oh, yeah, sorry, mislabeled, forgot to change the title on one. But this is the one that is a little bit longer. Capital Improvement Funds, CIF Implementation 2026. They both say that for the title. One's for parks, to be discussed later. This one just has the list of CIFs under number 1. So at the last meeting, we talked about Capital Improvement Fund concepts and trying to get a single type of format established for our departments so that commission and staff are at least kind of working off the same format document. And we discussed a couple ideas. I showed one of my formats that I've been using for several years personally. We had a little discussion on that. I just said I'd come back and try to keep the conversation going. So, I mean, if there's other formats, other ideas, certainly mine isn't perfect in the only way by any stretch of imagination. But if that format can work, then what's the next step? how do we keep the process moving forward? So I just put down very simple thoughts on how to move forward. The first one, just list the CIFs. Most of these we already have in our budget: water, electric, sewer, streets. I added stormwater and street equipment. Police, we already have that. Parks, sidewalks. Another one, anybody has any ideas? I think there's room, we can add more for sure. And then after that, kind of just prioritize those capital improvement funds into, it's hard to do them all at once, so which ones are you gonna start with? Personally, I see 4, and I'll have to come back to that. The next step is just select a CIF, or capital improvement fund to work on first, or maybe there's a couple we can leave on the agenda and just kind of nibble at them, keep them, several of them going at the same time. And then I think it's important to have a conversation about what goes on a capital improvement fund. So what's a big enough project, purchase, idea, maintenance project, I don't know. And each fund's a little bit different. You know, some funds never really have a whole lot of engineering fees, some funds have some major ones that we should probably consider budgeting for. So that's kind of a conversation as we go along. And then I think as necessary, plan work sessions, schedule work sessions, and try to pre-fill in as much as possible, which we've typically done that in the past. And then we're able to kind of start working off of a 10 or whatever year outlook, and be able to discuss those items that are on the 10-year plan and add additional items that come up through conversation, adjust. So, I mean, the dates are always moving, the costs are always moving, even some of the projects change significantly as we discuss them year in, year out. Sometimes it changes tremendously after discussing them 2 or 3 years in a row. Something that's about 5 years out, we're able to make some significant improvements to that final project because we've looked at it so many times. There's a lot of benefits to this. So just, and then try to, and it's not a final document because it changes constantly. And historically, we try to have these work sessions every 6 months. So each 6 months, we're revisiting them, adjusting a little bit here and there. But what it'll tell us is a pretty good idea that over the next, let's just stick with 10 years, how much money are we gonna have to spend on big projects? And what that'll tell us more than likely is, what do we have to, if we wanna fund it with a transfer into the capital improvement fund, similar to what we've been doing with the police fund, just what's that transfer amount? And then we can predict pretty accurately whether or not our current revenue streams will be able to fund the needs in order to properly maintain our system. And then we'll have something everybody can look at, pretty clear understanding, especially in the next couple of years, we can get pretty granular and have a good platform to work from in order to make sure the projects that we think are important, that are higher priority, we're gonna have the money and they're on the plan and they happen. In the past, on several of these funds, it's kind of really cool. We have major projects, major purchases that we've talked about for a few years, and when we finally come to making a $300,000-$400,000 project, we've got that thing beat pretty darn thin, and we have the money, and it's a very easy, calm decision to move forward. So, anyway, that's a little bit, some thoughts. So after that, have a conversation about it, and hopefully select a few capital improvement funds. I did say I'd come back to that. Looking at all the capital improvement funds, I may not have a complete list here. The ones that, looking at projects currently going on that I think are most important are the sewer. That one's, you've got projects going, got maintenance projects already going down there. We got issues from the state on certain chemicals and all the fun stuff. The streets, I think we're planning on a work session sometime soon. There's some big conversations about just what are our street systems that we're gonna have to discuss. Parks, obviously that's a big one, and then sidewalks. I think that's always a fun and important conversation. So out of all those, if I were to pick 4 to start with, those would be it. So, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Any comments? Bretman?
I mean, if you have some, I'll respectfully wait as well.
Oh, I'd like to hear yours first.
No, I mean, it's complete support here. I don't know, in an effort to move it forward, I don't know if you need to make a motion for this or what, but at the very minimum, to get all these CIFs in that format that Francis has presented. And then as far as prioritizing costs, identifying, you know, basics of, we're gonna need to replace this in 5 years, right? Like, before we're thinking about investments in new stuff that we don't have, you know, what are the basic costs that we need to maintain what we have and replace whatever we need to replace, and get those drawn out for all of these CIFs.
Yeah.
So is that something we do? Do we delegate that to the city? Like, how do you see
Well,
that?
I think the way I see that is, once we prioritize the things we want to look at, the work sessions will help us get the direct input from the departments, and they can gather costs from that point. My immediate kind of reaction to this is it's hard to prioritize because we already have the sewer project we already have the work out there in progress to define the plan from the engineers. So that I see as already in motion. I think we need to look at laying it out in your template, but so that has to happen. We already have some ideas for water, but I think that that's why I wanted this PowerPoint. I'd like to focus on the parks right away, and I think we can do some of these things in parallel. So yeah, I don't know if we need to, when it says select the capital improvement fund to work on first, I think it's actually, and you spoke to this, it's actually funds, because we can plan without having to have the money available.
I guess what I meant was, the first move is just putting them in this format.
Yeah.
Is that something we're delegating? Or is that something that we each take one and do it? How does that work?
I'll just focus on those 4, as I kind of mentioned, the sewer, streets, parks, and sidewalks. So the current one is on the agenda already for parks. We'll be discussing that. And more than likely, that's probably gonna be a pretty continuous agenda item. So we'll be nibbling away at that every meeting. And then part of that agenda item is kind of coming up with a plan of attack. What's next steps? How are we gonna get to where we wanna go? So that one is kind of probably a permanent fixture on the agendas. Sidewalks. But once again, each one of these is kind of unique for a lot of good reasons. With the sidewalks, that might be another just separate agenda item that, you know, the city commission kind of talks through, and it kind of, you know, we take a look at the diagram Bob gave us. I want to walk a lot of the sidewalks several years ago, really kind of identified, yeah, these are the main thoroughfares, and these are these blocks that are in better condition, bad condition, no sidewalks on these blocks. So we're kind of getting an inventory, and Bob has that, so we kind of work on the sidewalk one. So so specifically for sidewalks, it's kind of a more likely a good one to just keep on the agenda and kind of come up with a game plan on where's the high priorities, what's possible, what's the cost, and we can slowly add those in. Streets, we had intended to do a work session, but because of the change of the commission, that got postponed. And so, more likely in that specific capital improvement fund, we'll have a work session to kind of walk through. There's gonna be, at least, I think the idea there is to have a more in-depth discussion about our systems. So we've always had approach, well, just how do we want to approach streets? Do we want to continue to do the same thing, or do we want to take a different approach to how they're built and maintained? So that's more of a work session, and from that, it'll probably fill in a different thing. And the last one, sewer, we've been discussing that very intensely for the last year or two. I think that one probably could just be taking the current plan, putting it into capital improvement fund format. And then it's gonna be a lot of back and forth with the sewer department. May just be another agenda item, so each one's a little bit unique.
Yeah, but, so I think to get to Raphael's fundamental question, how do we, practically speaking, because it's basically, we want to divide our budgeting into recurring costs and these capital improvement costs. So who's gonna make the first swipe at, or how do we make the first swipe at breaking those budget lines out? I think that's your fundamental
Right,
question.
and apologies if I'm dense, if I'm being dense, but my recollection is that, you know, the chart was split into two halves. The top chart is just status quo, and then the bottom half would be investments or improvements for the future. So in my mind, I think the top, which is the status quo, is something that we can already do right now, just based on the data that we have. Like, can we do that for all of them? And then, as you mentioned, the bottom half, which is where we're looking ahead, maybe that's where the work sessions come into play, identifying the maintenance.
Yeah, yeah.
I guess, we're just gonna, how does, so with the accounting, you have your codes per line item. What's the most practical way to do this? Is it to keep kind of two separate documents with the codes in, let's say, a capital improvement fund being more generic, and then having another set of more granular list of vehicles and equipment and projects?
Okay,
Or is it to have a code for all the upcoming projects?
I'm not sure I'd worry about where it gets coded to, because you're gonna have a sewer fund, you're gonna have a sewer reserve fund. They're the same kinda. There'll be different codes for them, but I think
Sorry, Maurice, when you say reserve fund, are you talking about the
capital
improvement
improvement
fund?
fund, yeah. I would say I wouldn't worry about codes at this point, I would just develop the plan. So we have a 15-year equipment plan that we don't send it out anymore, but we used to do it until a couple of years ago. And that shows our existing major equipment, and then when the department heads think it's gonna be done, that's the kind of stuff I think you should focus on. Then when it gets down to nitty-gritty, you know, you either pay for it directly out of the sewer fund, for example, or you'll transfer money from the sewer fund to the sewer capital improvement fund and pay for it out of there. The benefit of paying for it out of the improvement fund is it's not what is known normally as a budgeted fund, which means you can spend all of it without permission, and that it would then, so when the sewer plant, with the debt was being paid, we were transferring out $233,000 a year into the reserve fund, as we called it, and then paying that debt out of there. That's what I see happening, because if you're wanting to save up for a project, say you want to do another $300,000 water line project, that may take 5 years to save up for that. So each year you transfer out the revenue, and that'd be in the top half of that chart that you put together, and in the bottom you'd list the project, and then you'd pay for it all out of that. That way it wouldn't get mixed up or spent in the regular fund.
But that's precisely the point. So how can we, a little bit more proactively, instead of just sort of having money out there somewhere, actually define what our expected recurring costs are per department?
Well, you just put a
That's what we
budget
budget
transfer.
for.
You put a transfer out.
No, I mean, we want to start, what I'm saying is, I would like to, I think what we need to do is break out what we expect to spend on a just a normal recurring basis,
Sure.
and then take all of those equipment costs and pull them out and phase them like we've done in the police, capital improvement fund, and that goes to where I'm using, we'll use the same phraseology, the bottom part.
Yeah.
And actually plan it a little bit more sort of programmatically rather than that. So that I don't.
Well,
it
so then
seems
it
to me
gets
that-
back to what you're saying is that if you have a project for a squad car, that could be a line item. There's either an existing line item we can assign or create a new one.
Mhm.
And if there's one for e-bike, shall we say, that could be a different line item. And that's just where the expenses are being charged to. The revenue would be up top, and that would just be a transfer, and that's probably gonna be the only source of funding unless you go for grants or something like that. So it's in the budget as a transfer out and a transfer into the improvement fund. And then that can have line items down there. If you would look at the police department capital improvement fund, that's what I think the model is. transfers 22,000 from the general fund each year, so that he
Right,
can
I
buy.
agree with you, and so, how can we, I think the first step mechanically, materially, is to take anything that you're currently, you know that we're gonna have to spend, you know, for streets, for example, we have to get a truck at some point. You put that down in the capital improvement.
Correct, we have a equipment list
Okay.
that lists the major equipment. I just quit doing it because it wasn't being used.
Okay, but I think what we wanna do is go back to that concept and be a little bit
We'll
more
update
rigorous
that.
about doing it.
And that, it can be independent of what you're planning to do, it could just be a guide, and then use that to program what you want in. So, I can have that for the next meeting, the 15-year equipment list.
I think that's the beginning of the answer to your question.
I think tangibly, and I don't know if the next meeting is the appropriate time frame or whether it's the next month, but we would see 6 of those sheets that Francis came up with last week for each of these SIFs with at least the top filled out.
Well, so the top was the revenue. And before you determine what the revenue would be, you'd wanna know what you're gonna try to pay for out of there. So just say we was building a new sewer plant, and we know it's gonna be $3 million, and it's gonna be financed over 20 years, and it's gonna be another $250,000 a year. You know, you'd have to be able to generate that amount of revenue transferred over. If you list a whole bunch of items, that's fine, we're gonna then have to figure out how to pay for it.
Wasn't the top just the projections, right? Can we just make projections assuming nothing?
I thought the
Nothing
top was
crazy.
the revenue part, and the bottom part was the expense part.
The top part was, yes, revenue coming in.
Yeah.
But it also included, it's kind of like the regular budget, it revenue and then expenses.
Yeah.
And one of the expenses was a transfer out to the bottom part, to the other fund,
The
the
reserve.
capital improvement,
Capital
reserve fund. And so it is, you have your budget, your revenue estimates, and then your expenses, and one of your expenses is capital improvement transfer. And that allows the projections to kind of play out. Do we run out of money or do we have plenty? And then that transfer in, that creates a whole new set of books, if you will, for the capital improvement fund.
So one of the things, he's talking about that work session on the street department, that might be a good one to get knocked out first, because right now we do a process that's chip and seal. You may not wanna continue with that process, or maybe another process. And there's some really expensive equipment that would need to be purchased potentially. The oiler machine is why, Bob, is that $250,000 or 300,000?
Around 300.
About 300,000. So the process we do now uses this machine that's called an oiler, and chipping and sealing is what we've been doing, and it's okay, it works. But another option would be to eliminate that process and do asphalting and other stuff that wouldn't require that piece of equipment. And I think you'd want to go down that pathway to see what do we think our future streets should be and how we do that, and then you'd worry about, 'cause
Right, I think my question is even more elementary than that.
Yeah.
So again, just the revenues for, call it 2025, and then a budget for 2026. And instead of what we're calling the transfer out, let's just call it a surplus for now, right? And then we can figure out whether that's gonna be transferred to the water SIF or the whatever, electric SIF. But it's just an idea to get a view of the world. What are we working with right now? And once we have those for each of these SIFs, we have these work sessions for the particular departments, and then like, okay, let's now itemize those surpluses as transfers to your fund, the street fund or whatnot. So if that data is something that we already have, at least that top half that I'm referring to, then it seems like maybe 2 weeks is an appropriate timeline.
We keep using the term revenue, and I don't think this has anything to do with revenue. It has to do with expenses. What are the projected expenses?
Revenue and expenses.
Yeah,
with
I mean,
surpluses
yeah,
at
obviously,
the bottom.
no, I get it, but the point is, what I think we need to do is go through every single thing that we think we're gonna spend money on. Which one of those things is a normal recurring item, that goes in this bucket? Which are things that are not normal, because they're mixed together now. And then
It's an income statement, right
Yeah.
at the top, it's an income statement, just our current income statement, and then our estimated income statement for next year.
So for all, I think that the smart way to approach this is for all of our projected expenses, put them in one category or another. Recurring, or we'll use SIP now as our official pronunciation of that acronym. That's, I think, the best way to start. Go ahead.
What are the, another way to look at it is more asset management. And with asset management, the way I would look at it anyways, it's, yes, what we're planning on spending, but it's also kind of a list of all of the assets, all the vehicles, equipment, buildings, all that good stuff. And then, once we have a list of all the assets, the next 10 years, there might be nothing really planned to spend there. Might be a brand new vehicle, piece of equipment. But that's another, and that's kind of what I mentioned many years ago, the city hosted the asset management class. And that was part of it, it's just listed, they got way too granular on the nuts and bolts and it gets crazy. But I think just the major assets and also the major projects anticipated in the next 10 years, whether it's maintenance or infrastructure upgrades or maintenance or other stuff. I think that's another approach that might be a good place to start. It's just, we have a lot of this already, but it's just formalizing the document format. But I think if we start with the assets, the whole list, get a full exhaustive list, this is all of our equipment, everything we have planned for that department over the next 10 years. It might be 10 things, it might be 30 things. And then we can just work from that as a starting point.
Does the city track depreciation? Because I think that's what, in the income statement is getting at what you're saying. And then you go and look at the depreciation and these are the assets that they're depreciating over 5, 7, 15 years, whatever their asset class is.
So, not specifically. I mean, some of it is more taking a look at that 10-year, and we can, a lot of times I'll even put on the list of the description list, it was purchased in this year, probably will need to be replaced in this year. So each item has kind of a birth date and a death date, so we know, okay, it has, and then an estimate cost if it does fall within the 10 years. And then rather than depreciating it and having different numbers in every column, it's just a lump sum at the end. That's the way I've approached it.
That's how they do it with the police cars. They replace them every, I forget, however many years. So you just know you have that cost at that time, which is essentially the same thing.
It's the same thing, just, yeah. Okay. But yes, just put your plan on paper.
All right, so I think we're all in violent agreement here. We just need to figure out the way to separate out these requirements. And I don't know what one of your goals, one of the goals of this document is to prioritize things, so I guess we could at least have an agreement on that tonight, if that's helpful. And I think it needs to be done for all of us. I don't know if Maurice seems to have quit on this conversation now, so we'll task him in his absence, and that's the way it's gonna be. Well, for all of these funds, I guess we could just ask him to, well, what's the specific tasking? I'd like to see things that are recurring cost elements and other things, even if they're already in the budget, that fall into these equipment, major projects, things like that. Separate out those projected costs as a beginning point. And then we can refine that with the department heads as we go forward. We're gonna hit sidewalks and parks later on in the meeting anyway, so we can discuss that later if you like. Good for now? You all set, Maurice? Okay. Next agenda item is we talked about this last night a little bit, 5th Street and Bertrand electrical project. I don't know if we have any numbers or if you just wanted to.
Don't have them yet.
Yeah, we don't have that. So I don't have any additional information. I don't know if you do in terms of any comment.
So I think at the last meeting, we talked, there's potential project plus looking at city infrastructure. Wouldn't really call it messy, but it's just infrastructure that's been kind of layered over many decades. And certainly an opportunity to clean some of that up. But the idea is to look at moving some poles, maybe going underground, maybe moving to some transformers. And I think, Maurice and Don met with a property owner for a while back. And then I think Don's checking with somebody just for some rough estimates on costs. And then we'll kind of have a ballpark. If has appeal, and we can get some formal quotes. Is there any estimate on time when Don can get a rough estimate or?
I haven't followed up yet, I just assumed we'd have it by now.
Okay.
And I'll ask him tomorrow.
Well, here's an interesting question that occurs to me in terms of the conversation we've had so far. What is this? An item like this that comes up, like we didn't plan for this. It's not budgeted. It's kind of an improvement. How do we plan? Is this something that, do we add a sort of 10% to our capital improvement knowing that things pop up? Like, is it just an interesting question to me? Like, where does that come, which part of that budget does that come out of? Go ahead.
I think it's fair. So historically, I don't want to talk for Maurice, but I think this is the way the city's operated. We underestimate costs.
Right.
Underestimate revenues, overestimate costs. And it's been pretty consistent, and so we always are safe. And when projects come up, we always have enough money, and we never run our funds down to zero. So if something, that's got merit, we know these surprises are gonna come up. And so we always try to buffer that.
And I guess the sort of philosophical question is, will we draw from the improvement fund when this comes up? Because that enters into it, or will we would cost share it? You know, I guess we just have to look at what's going on, but because some of the money that's available now because of that conservative approach sits up just in the pot, and we're gonna be separating the pot out into two pieces.
The really nice thing about it is by having those funds, we'll be able to take a look at them if and when these situations come up, and we'll have the money one way or another.
Yeah, well,
just with the-
this is just a thought question, because maybe when we're considering capital improvement, because this is what I've experienced, we have things come up all the time that kind of have to be done, and it's like the floor of the library.
Bridge.
And the bridge, where does that come from? So just something to think about when we think about what is the level of the capital improvement fund, where is that contingency amount? So,
Sorry, I keep talking, but a good example, Mr. Mayor, is the sewer fund. Remember, we just approved the Lakeview gravity feed line, $400,000 plus another 40 in engineering. The initial estimates that when we discussed, do we want to keep going on this project? Do we want to do the bond thing? My numbers I put in there were some of the initial estimates of 800,000. And so we definitely, it created a nice little buffer there. But I think historically, that's the way we've approached it. We've always been in a very good financial position.
If we're talking philosophically here, maybe another way to look at it, this seems a little bit different than the bridge or some of these other projects where those are almost necessities. This seems like it's more of an investment type of scenario where a private individual or a group of individuals would like the city to do this for them so that they can erect a business that will then bring further revenue in the future. And I'm not doubting that in the slightest, but I think maybe there's a different calculus that goes there. And I'm not saying this is the right way or not, but maybe to consider, besides cost sharing, how are we gonna pay for it as far as it's not something that's been budgeted before, maybe just having them front it all up front. Sure, you can do it if you wanna pay for it. They say the city's not, or that government is not as efficient in doing things. We'll let them handle running the lead on that project and making sure it's done efficiently since they're paying for it out of pocket. But then on the back end, we rebate the sales taxes the additional sales taxes that they are promising they will bring to the city until they get their money back and then call it some some return. I don't know, that's just a philosophical way of thinking about it. To the extent that there's no money, set aside for that, we can still let it happen if they want to pay for it, and then we'll just reduce their taxes on what they promise they're going to bring us in the future.
That sounds like GAAP accounting. So what, in any case, let's wait and see how much it costs and decide what the,
Otherwise we're just scratching their back and yeah, maybe they build this, maybe they don't.
well, all right, I'm gonna move on to the next up agenda, quarterly newsletter, which, I think we have actually an example.
It'd be a bloated version, but
Yeah.
we just did it for practice.
Maurice has generated a draft of a year in review that he put in the packet. So we have a sense of what could be generated.
So what was the, for instance, when you brought that up originally, it was about responding to information that may be floating around. What is the purpose of the, because I can handle this kind of stuff, project reports, that sort of stuff. Was there another aspect to the newsletter, like commentary or something like that from the commission or the mayor? Or what was the newsletter supposed to be? Commissioner of the week?
Yeah, let's wrap it up. But I think of the month, like for the quarter.
Well, so my purpose of doing that year in review was to reacquaint myself with Microsoft Word to see what I can do. That's what I can do. As far as content, that's what I kind of need to know what you're looking for. Is it something I generate? Is it something you folks generate or we generate? What are we looking at?
Do you want to give your thoughts, Francis? I have some idea. Go ahead.
Sure, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the idea is just updating the people of St. Mary's on what's going on in the city. And the way there's a lot of different styles. I'm learning every day. Everybody does stuff differently than me. But the way I would approach it is just somehow determining a consistent order to the different aspects of the city, so the different departments and then different services that the city does. And just so we always start with, maybe it's law enforcement, or maybe it's streets, or maybe it's sewer, I don't know. But we start with the same thing each month and then just work right on through it. And then it's just an update on what happened that quarter, and if nothing happened, sewer department, everything's going great, nothing happened.
So department by department kind of review of each quarter. And it can be then kind of what I've generated here, but on a not so size-wise thing. But is that all we're looking for? We're not looking for any sort of commentary or anything, which I'm fine, I don't care.
Plus you want to include at the end, the most inaccurate social media posts of the quarter. You might have
Somebody gets them the last word.
So you would envision this going out in utility bills? Because I'm wondering, is if you're wanting to do that kind of public relations, is Facebook not an option, or, because Sid already has that? So I gave a copy of my, a paper copy of the year in review to Dr. Childs there. He's gonna have his wife do an edit on it.
You
If
weren't
they're-
supposed to say that out loud. I haven't asked her yet. But
She's
she
probably
doesn't
not
listen to
watching.
this.
No, there's 6 people watch it live. Jamie Holmes is one of them. Well, anyway, I kind of know what to start compiling. What I used to do is I'd put these sort of things on the blog post. I can do that again, and you can pick and choose if you want to do that in the quarterly report. It can be more in depth, but okay, I understand. It's nothing that's going to be. There's no creativity involved. It's just cut and paste what I did there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I personally found this to be very well done, and if I get distracted, I don't like something, I have a hard time reading it, and I read through this and never hesitate. So I think the format's good, the content's good, it's very interesting.
What I meant by
and,
there's nothing I have to create. There's not creative to me. That's just finding the pictures and putting comments and going through the minutes. I based it off of last year's minutes. That's all I did. Creativity would be something I'm not capable of really pulling off, so I think we'll be fine with the quarterly newsletter.
Any inputs from anyone?
Yeah,
No, I mean, there's the letter from the editor at the front, I imagine, that's as creative as it's gonna get.
I think that, personally, I don't wanna commit, but it would make sense for one of us to write something at the beginning. If it has to be me each month, it would make some sense to have some kind of, look through the material, make a general comment, thank people for their undying support, things like that. But if we don't have to commit to that, I think this is really good,
Yes.
frankly.
We can commit to one commissioner a quarter.
I think so. Should be possible.
well, I can compile this sort of information
Yeah.
with no problem, and because it has to be like no more than 2 pages, because it would add weight to our mailing, and then that would, increase. I think we only have 1 sheet there now. I don't know what the total is. I forgot.
Yeah.
What do we do for the next level up? If we have 1 sheet, what's the next
For
for regular mailing on
it
our?
wouldn't change.
If we put
One more.
5 sheets in there?
If there's 5 sheets, yeah.
Yeah, but we could put 2 for sure,
Yeah.
for a
Two or
total of
three.
3.
Up to 4.
So anyway, yes, I
So
can
I
do
think
it.
we all were
Did
duly
you
impressed.
circulate that in Word, or was it just through like WordPress?
No, so I did that in Microsoft Word, and then there's a publish option instead of a print option, so you publish it as a PDF, and that makes the links active.
Okay.
And, go ahead.
If you don't mind, if you could circulate it like in the future in Word, like when you send it to us for proofreading or whatnot.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
It's easier to like track changes and, edit, like punctuation, grammar check, all of that.
I get it.
Yeah.
You just want the source document, and I can send both.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Because you asked if we could go through it one time, and I would have loved to if,
There's still time,
Word.
but, yeah, and the only thing that you have in front of you on that document, there'll be a footer at the bottom. But yeah, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, just,
Not everybody has Word,
okay.
but it can go up in the or Google Sheets or whatever it is. Docs. Alright. So yes, I can do it.
All right. Well done, Maureen. Next item on the agenda is the parks plan, which I think is really kind of a continuation of the earlier discussion. Unless we wanted to circle back to that briefing that we received, I guess, at the end of last year. Well, I guess it was at the end of last year, previous commission. Is right? You guys were.
Yeah.
It was the first one?
Yeah, the first one.
Okay.
Is there any feedback for the rec board?
Well, we need to get them feedback at some point. I don't have any right now. I mean, that's one of my questions is how exactly do we want to approach looking at their sort of recommendations and refining them? Do we want to do a work session? Do we want to try to hammer it out in a meeting like this? I don't know the best answer to that question. So I don't know if you have opinion. Should I say something to that?
So is there, for instance, you brought up the idea of a consultant. Are there enough ideas out there? Have there been enough public input that, the reason I would bring that up now is that they might have the expertise on how to layer this stuff out and what can be done in stages and
Yeah,
what would
but I
complement
don't
each
know.
other.
Until we've decided for sure what we want on the list, I don't know if it makes a lot of sense to.
It was just a thought because they
I
can
think
help,
we want to get to that, I think, but.
they can help eliminate some, they may have some idea on costs.
Yeah. I'm waiting for Jeff. I'm surrounded by this silence on either side. I don't know what that means, but. Would you like to say something, Jeff? You don't have to.
Okay.
Not yet. All right. Go ahead, Frank.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I have 2 documents here. One is this label, Capital Improvement Fund, CIF implementation. It's really the parks. It's the shorter one, and if you read into it, it talks about the parks. And once again, it's an idea to start the discussion on how to move forward. The other one is just this little Google sheet that I started. And I filled it out during the work session with the Parks and Rec a little bit, but just through my, it's been busy last couple weeks, so I did not formalize it and get some of my thoughts in there. You know, the presentation was a good presentation. I think we covered a lot of materials, but as far as, you know, how to work off of it, it's a lot of pages, a lot of different numbers, a lot of different thoughts. So I thought, you know, would it be easier to just go park by park on a document similar to this Google Sheet format and just list some of the things that we learned in the work session or the Parks and Rec board told us. And so the idea, if we go back to the little Word document here, you know, what would be an idea moving forward? So the first thing is just list the ideas per park space. And then add the ideas from the presentation from the Parks and Rec board, discuss and adjust items as needed, add additional items. I personally think that, you know, there's a lot of just getting that train moving. And there's just getting a few things on paper. But I think if we really spend a little bit more time, there's a lot of different people that have traveled the state, traveled the country, gone to some really unique parks. Just watching my kids play, been down several parks in various parts of Kansas and kind of see what they really enjoy. There's a lot of parks that have some unique things that, you know, you have a choice. You can have another swing set or something really unique that kids will play on for hours. So I think we do need to kind of stretch the thoughts a little bit, maybe come up with some, I don't know, something a little bit more fun than some of the traditional parks ideas. And then we need to, I think, get to the point where we don't have anything to add to the list. We're happy with the list, and then we schedule a work session again with the Parks and Rec board, go back over it, just figure out if it's realistic, and then finalize the list. And then at that point, I think it could be two different approaches. One is that sometimes there's just simple, easy, obvious things, maintenance upgrades or simple fixes, simple adds to existing park amenities. And then there's more than likely going to be some larger projects that are going to require some drainage and infrastructure changes. We're looking at roads. I mean, we're looking at some serious stuff to where I think we need to have the conversation about, do we hire an engineer to take this list, go out there with a work session, talk about the space, and really help make sure we're all looking at it somewhat in the same direction. And then see if we can hire an engineer to put together a more formal plan. So take the ideas and apply them to that space. And then from there, we'll get a report back, get some cost estimates, and then we'll kind of have a better idea on what it would cost in order to do some of the ideas we think are worth considering. And then figure out if we have the funding for it or how that's going to work. And then we can start moving forward. I think all of this stuff can certainly happen this year, and I think it can happen in the first part of the year if we stay after it. But that would be my suggestion, just kind of the commission look through the presentation from the Parks and Rec board, add it in, and then filled out your own thoughts on, you know, does it fit the space? Does it use the space well? The demographic use, does it fit the widest age range of people? Time of year use, how many months of the year does something get used for the cost and the space that it takes up? These are all decisions, you know, we would have to make with our personal decisions, or home or anything. I think it's important to make sure we get the best return on investment in the parks. And we can even kind of check into cost estimates. And I think if we come and put some thought into it, I think it would be a good addition to the Parks and Rec.
Right, so I agree with that. That's my practical question. So, it sounds like we should assign ourselves some homework. If we actually want to move forward, we need to take what they gave us, think about it, and actually fill out this list. Because otherwise, essentially, our next work session needs to be in one of these meetings, or probably next meeting, where because we have ideas in front of us, and that was when we left the briefing, I was asking myself, okay, great, now what do we do next? And I think this is what we need to do next. So, so I would propose just for us that which next time we come here, we'd be actually prepared to have this sort of list of things and really start narrowing it down to a realistic, actionable plan. Fair enough?
Yes.
Yeah.
But it seemed to me that, and I'm not trying to shrug off responsibility from us, but it seemed to me when they came to us last time with a map. Well, this is what the park is going to look like. This is what we had input from all these folks, what they want to see. And even with the map that they showed us, they're like, oh, the volleyball courts that we're proposing to be near the dump, they shouldn't go there, you know? What if we asked them to go back one more time, take into consideration the feedback that they've gotten from what they presented to us, and then they come back with this map, and then that map, as long as it aligns with, you know, what we're looking for, you send that map to an engineer and say, hey, is this realistic? How much is it gonna cost? You color code portions of that map based on their expected cost, and then you just knock them out.
Right.
So my concern would be, I think we also got a sewer, or it's not a sewer, like a sidewalk plan, and one of the sidewalks is gonna be right to the north of Riverside Park. So what if we invest X dollars, or like, I think the north edge of Riverside Park was at least highlighted in purple or blue as a proposed fix. But in any case, my concern would be one of our projects does something there that we have to tear out or conflicts with something else that we're planning for the park, you know, 5 years later, and we're just stepping on our toes at that point.
I think that, yes, we do wanna go back to them and have them redraw, because I think the map was actually the most helpful
Yeah.
thing. And there was good input from people about the location of the book. So I think, that's on Francis's list, that would be item E. And I think that's reasonable, because why ask them to redraw their park with things on it that we're saying we're not interested in that?
Right.
So I think that we could do a little filtering first, and then meet with them and say, okay, thanks for your initial input. We liked all these things you gave us. We added a couple other things. Could you please redraw that map? And then maybe have a work session, and then the meeting directly after that work session, no kidding, make a decision, and then maybe go to the engineer. So I think same idea. So sorry, you gotta come to the next meeting with.
I'm just gonna X things out on their map and say, all right.
Well, I
remaining
think
things-
you have the things you might X
Right.
out, I have things I would X out,
Right.
and we decide, you know, what. And what makes a lot of sense to me is tied to what you said as well. There are the short-term goals and the long-term goals, and I think that we could achieve some of these things fairly quickly. And be aware of all these other capital improvement projects that we don't step on our toes, So for this, let's go do another comment.
Just clarification, sometimes when things get said, just to make sure everybody's on the same page, we're looking at the same thing. On the sidewalk map, there is a blue mark on the north side of Riverside Park. In the legend at the bottom left of the page, the blue marks are for current sidewalks,
Yeah,
the yellow ones are for missing, and the red ones are need repaired.
Okay,
So the blue one, there is a sidewalk there, but
you're not proposing anything, or the plan doesn't suggest.
I think it's in
touch.
pretty good shape, so just,
I think that's that big sidewalk right around the, yeah.
it's in pretty good shape, so it should be.
And I am also, I don't know if you have to agree to this, but the picture that I'm using is the one that came to us from the Park and Rec, which was nothing like what the Caw Valley picture was like. And so that's the one that I'm driving off of. Doesn't have to be that way, because they're gonna redraw it anyway. But. Okay, good. We can come with some ideas for next time, at least on that. Electric rate discussion, it's the next item, F, Foxtrot. And we had some data in the packet on that, I think. And did you who wanted to speak to that? I think Francis, good, we do, good.
So the electric rates, each year, we look at the electric revenues and expenses, and there's a formula that we have to make an electric rate in order to make sure we're taking into consideration all the various inputs. In the formula, we like to adjust it each year because the rates we receive from the KPP kind of vary each year. And there's an adjustment each month for the energy cost adjustment. And in our bill, if the rates from KPP exceed, I'm getting a little nervous because the guy in the audience that knows a little bit more about electric rates than I'll ever think about knowing. Make me nervous, Leo. Am I saying it all correctly? It's been a year since I thought of this. So but we have to adjust the rate in order to make our energy cost adjustment not be such a large percentage of the bill. Because you'll see the formula and it'll make sense a little bit there. But when we don't adjust it for a couple of years, if the rates from the KPP keep going up, then the energy cost adjustment portion of the bill becomes significant, and people don't understand it, and it's kind of a source of frustration. So we try to make sure the rates take into consideration the bulk of the electric costs, and then the energy cost adjustment is a very minute change on the bill each month. And it's a pretty neat formula. We bring in the commercial customers and their demand rates, and the residential customers are high volume, low volume. But it's just part of the process. Each January, February, we take a look at the rates, the formula, and then we determine if we need to raise, lower, keep the rates the same. And then after discussion, and sometimes pass an ordinance, change the rates, and then move forward. So we did it last year. I think we did a very good job.
I have so we have a spreadsheet with various tabs. I have a page-by-page explanation, an image of it, and it's like 40 or 50 pages that I can send to anybody that would want to read. It takes you exactly through what he's proposing and gives you an explanation of what it is. 3 people have read it since 2019. So, but it is, I use it as my note, so if you're wanting to know the absolute basics of how this is working and how the spreadsheet works, I've got it.
Is that high level explanation, not the 40 pages, but just what Francis described in the newsletter? And I'm sorry if it wasn't, I missed it, but it makes complete sense. And if someone's getting their rate raised, understanding what Francis just said in the newsletter, and why just.
Oh, you're saying that'd be a topic.
Yeah,
Sure.
topic, yeah.
Excellent.
So if anybody wants that, I can send it somewhere on our website, I just don't know where. But it takes you through every step of it.
Yeah, just so that it's transparent. No one can claim there's no transparency, and there's a reason why it's being done the way it is.
You got it.
Yeah, would you send that out again, please? I know I have it in here somewhere. Okay. Yeah, just as a sort of related thing, one of the things this is another reason for having a pretty clear sense of what our improvement projects might be, because with any of these things where we're bringing in revenue, we can anticipate things by making a small rate increase and putting some of that money aside, which is what we did last year, started to do last year. Next item on the agenda, golf, so to speak, so it's just the 2026 sidewalk plan. And then we already talked a little bit about that. In that, well, there's a picture. And did you put this one on here as well, Francis? As an agenda item, or are we just gonna find the picture? Go ahead.
Too much coffee one day, so I added a bunch of items to the agenda.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the sidewalk plan, it's an important thing. I think the sooner we talk about it, the better. So we have the map from Bob that Maurice emailed out. I think that's a great starting point. I mean, looking at that take a look at all the sidewalks in town is at the next meeting, maybe we start listing out ideas and start to begin a little kind of just a list of sidewalks we'd like to add, replace, and then start taking a look at the costs and prioritize and, what's possible this year. We try to do a little bit each year, and it all adds up. It all adds up, but if we don't do it each year, it's hard to catch up. So I think the sooner the better, but just if I could ask, if you're interested, at the next meeting, if we could have a list of ideas on where to put the focus, and,
You mean in terms of locations?
yeah, I mean, specifically the one that came up with the TEEP study, I think, was Second Street.
Yeah.
That one's a little tricky, but probably necessary, so that might be something to consider. So I just think we just need to keep it on the front burner, or else it's really easy for months to go by. And I think in order for us to plan out, especially something like the Second Street one, that'll take a few months to plan out. So we wanna knock that out, a project in the spring. And historically, we've kind of done one in the spring, one in the fall, various deals, but I'd like to keep that going, so.
If you go up on Second Street, I think the issue is, so you put it in on the walking trail, as you're talking about, where does that leave you when you get off of it on the south part? Does that leave you out in the street again? Is that a good plan? That's what the TEEP thing would point out, that, so it's just not the sidewalk itself, it's where do you go when you get to that point? So think about that as well.
Well, at least you have a better chance of getting there without getting hit or.
I was telling you, that's one of the concerns, and that's a concern that, KDOT has on sidewalks and stuff, that it has to go somewhere. I mean, we're already using it as such and violating the whole thing, but that's what I'd like to also think about, is where do you go from there?
So if someone breaks an ankle on one of our sidewalks, like, is the city responsible for that?
Sidewalks, well, so it could be. It's likely not necessarily the case. Sidewalks are generally maintained by the property owner
Okay.
and that sort of stuff. But if there is a problem with it and that we don't enforce our ordinances and someone gets injured because of that, there's a chance that we could be involved in something like that. It would depend on the circumstances.
Could I just ask about your map, please, Bob? And you said, Maurice, it could have been a problem with the scanning, but I see blue lines, and then I see some yellow highlights and sort of reddish highlights. But what is that pointing to? I mean, let me see. So for example, if we look, if you have the picture open, Bob?
I do.
If you look over on the block just north of Riverside Park between 5th and 6th Street. So it's the one block up, right across Lasley between 5th and 6th. I see 3 blue lines around that block
Yes.
and two red or pink highlights. What does that mean?
Needs replaced.
So that whole, so it's an existing sidewalk that needs to be replaced, okay. And so if I see a blue line, I'm sorry if this is too hard to follow, if you go up 6th Street to just north of Alma, I see a blue line, so that's that sidewalk on 6th Street going up, I guess.
Yes.
And then there's a yellow mark. That means,
There's parts missing.
okay, so, and that would be, there's either the breaks either on the west, I guess we'd have to look and see if it's going north, south, or east, west. It's one of those, okay, I just wanted to understand,
That TEEP study, I noticed they also had a map that said it was,
A roundabout at the bottom,
no, it
they had
was,
that.
that it was the map of pedestrian frequency from Replica. I was wondering,
yeah.
do we know if that's valid at all, or,
They went out and did the count.
well, for pedestrians? And this was from Replica.
Yeah. I'll check with Sid, but. You wanna know if the information in there is accurate, and Oh, so Replica is a company that, yeah, okay. That's an outside thing that they use as a kind of a benchmark, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't know, I would assume, but I don't know, and it'd be a question for the people who did it, I guess.
Okay.
But is that something we follow up on about the accuracy, because Sid knows everyone involved in it, he can make it happen.
Okay, no, that would be helpful.
Okay.
I looked at the map and it surprised me. I wasn't sure.
Well, they went out on Sundays and they were out there in their vests and everything, and so. But what I'm saying is, so they would know if that data was relevant or, I mean, they did their own, so they use Replica as kind of a, yeah, I will follow up on that.
Okay, thank you.
So are you, hoping, Francis, that we would go look at these particular spots? Or do you have a priority already set in your mind, Bob, about,
Second Street, Hillside, and it'd be nice to get something overlaid or continue with the trail where we stopped at the church parking lot there, just past the cemetery, and continue on some more with that trail. It's just gravel down, a lot of time when it rains and mud.
oh, you mean actually paving or putting,
Yes. That and the hillside is probably.
so yeah,
Did you map that, put an estimate together for cost,
For the trail,
whatever you're proposing?
hopefully. or what-
Yeah, I think whatever you want to recommend, I think you could give the.
well, I'd be, the Second Street potential sidewalk seems like a really important thing for safety,
Mhm.
but it also seems tricky, so I don't know,
That's kind
if
of.
it's even feasible, because of the way, the hillside comes down and then there's the width. And that's bigger than anything we've done to this point, I think. I mean, that stretch all the way down Elm was, well, pretty long, but I mean, it wasn't up a steep hill, so I don't know. So you're not so concerned about some of these other smaller spots over here to the west, is that your point?
Oh, well, yeah, they're concerning, but the most traffic are used, I would say right now, is Second Street.
So I guess if you have time, maybe try to look at some of these other spots.
So just to be clear, we're talking about paving the current gravel trail that's on Second Street.
Sounds like he's,
Well, maybe not all of it, maybe just do part of it again, some more. We started on it a couple years ago. It's kind of we did it with the academy. Maybe.
sorry, this is a detailed question, but there's that one spot where it's completely washed out. It seems like someone goes in every once in a while and dumps a whole bunch of rocks on there.
More gravel.
Is that something that could be, if you were just to isolate an area, it seems like that's a spot that washes out. Could that be reinforced with a
Should it be?
sidewalk sort of thing? I mean,
Um,
could it be?
I think if it was concrete, it wouldn't wash away.
Yeah. It just seems to be a pretty recurrent problem. Every once in a while I notice that it's pretty significant gap down
Every
there.
time we get a rain, it does wash some
Okay.
spots.
You're talking about the south turn in?
No, no.
Because all that's like.
Well, that's pretty washed away too, but just walking up the path about, I don't know, a third of the way up, it's a flat area, but there's this, the pipe that goes underneath. And it's on the downside of that, the east side, it's
Yeah.
pretty rugged.
And deep.
You keep adding block to it.
Yeah, eventually it'll stop, I don't know. All right, another homework assignment. Next item, library flooring, an adjustment in the estimate. Because they have to go around the shelves or something.
Not for now, but,
Yeah.
You might-
So, on that estimate, the original was with everything cleared out of the library. And they would just come in and lay the carpet. Well, there's a lot of shelves and a lot of books. And the shelves are kind of rickety, they're not ready to fall over, but they do have some jacks that you can rent. and you can jack them up and wheel them out, but I don't know if they make it with, and just to rent the jack and ship it here, it was like $7,000.
And this only changed 6? something like that.
Yes, so that's the other option, is to go around all the shelves, and of course, that's gonna take more time and labor to cut it out, and then cut it back in, you know. They're just 2-inch, or 2-foot squares that they're putting back in there, so it won't be as hard to put them in, but you will have to cut it all around each shelf. He said it's doable, but, you know, it's gonna cost more, so that's the updated estimate.
Any comments? Other than let's get rid of the library building, but I mean, that's sort of a longer term question that we have discussed. We could come back to it, but at this point, we've kind of committed to doing it. We did a consensus to accept this adjusted, we have a consensus to accept the increase of $6,000 in the bid and go on with the flooring project. Go ahead if you wanted to say something. Warmed up.
Okay,
Yeah, we have a consensus then? Yes. Wrap that.
I mean, he's my father-in-law, so I mean, I don't know what's appropriate, but like I understand using an X-Acto knife to cut rectangles, you know, that costs more labor.
Yeah, well, I mean,
That costs more.
either that or well.
it costs
yes,
more to not move the stuff. If
Yeah.
they could move it, you can just go through it, you take more time, you gotta work around it, that's why it costs more. Consensus means there's no objection, so
Okay.
you can remain quiet and still not object, so.
No objection.
No objection. No objection. Okay. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you.
All right, and the last item on the agenda is a T-Mobile grant, which I seem to have lost the email for that. So what can you tell me?
So T-Mobile offers a $50,000 grant to small communities. It awards, I think, 25 of these a quarter, it might be a year or quarter, don't quote me on that. Applications are due by March 31st, and they prioritize or they give extra credit to projects that revitalize downtown and, you know, promote growth or tourism or travel there. So the question is this something that, you know, is worth it for us to pursue? And if we do pursue, what would we like to pitch as what we're applying for this $50,000 grant for, with the caveat that it needs to be completed by the first quarter of 2027. So the first thing that jumps to mind, I know the parks plan only discussed the flats and Riverside, but Cow Valley has expressed interest in upgrading some part of Railroad Park. You know, that is on Main Street. I don't know how much it's gonna cost to do the electrical work.
So hang on. Railroad Park, the city leases that,
Okay.
and we have it in 5-year leases. The group that you're talking about was going to develop it, wanted to put restrooms on there, and when asked, the answer wasn't no, the answer was hell no. We don't want anything like to put on there. And they said the best that we can hope for is to keep the lease as it is. And that stage that was put on there, I did not okay that, by the way. That was done by someone in that group, whatever. Now, you may be able to make some enhancements to that park, but there's a lease agreement which I can provide you, and pretty much anything we want to do would violate those terms of that lease agreement, as far as Railroad Park is concerned. The guy's pretty blunt about it.
Right.
But that doesn't mean you can't do anything with the flats, and you can't do other things downtown, but Railroad Park,
We can do anything in town, it's just they would give extra credit to something that's like downtown and revitalizing.
Well, my
And-
would it be, would some of that electrical work qualify, I
Right.
think?
Like,
It
I would
seems like
think
a
so, yeah,
perfect,
but I don't know how much.
oh, you're asking about that
I
project.
was just throwing ideas out, so Railroad Park, whatever the electrical work under.
So I looked through that, and you can't do anything that would benefit either directly or indirectly for a for-profit business.
Okay.
And if you look through there, it has that, and then also, I just got a chance to look at it, but, there are ways to do things that would be community, that could be electrical, but, I'm not sure how we'd have to, we'd have to write that up in a way that,
I mean, we got 50,000, like, there's gotta be a project around town that, you know, would be helpful, that we could, at the very least, apply for.
how about the Second Street sidewalk? Sounds like community safety, benefits to, I mean, I'm not kidding, that's gonna be a very expensive.
How about flashing lights at the First Street crossing? Because those could be several $100,000.
Big life size.
Yeah, but really, I mean, we've talked tonight about
That would
things that we'd like to get done, we've got parking. we
enhance the
wanna do,
downtown. Traffic lights.
And I'd be happy to put the application together, you know, we have an idea on what we wanna apply for, but we need to commit, like, to the sidewalk. 'cause
This is
that's
a
what we
no
want to
strings
do.
attached thing, no doubt, right?
I mean, just wanted to bring it to your attention, I'd have to look into it, I don't know what T-Mobile could ask in return.
No, that's always the concern with the grant. Yeah, well, we have that golf course
Well,
up there
that's
because
the-
we're encumbered by a $2,000 grant.
Well, T-Mobile now requires all of us to be on their plans or something, I don't know.
Yeah.
But yes, I would double check that, but I just wanted to put out there, you know, brainstorm, if we have 50,000 to spend, you know, maybe, or to apply for, that we could commit to.
Right, well, so if you could get an estimate on the sidewalk and any other stuff that we were just talking about up in that walking path. Why not? So if you don't mind reviewing
Yeah.
the grant. Would you resend that to me, please? I don't know, I guess.
What, say what?
I think you sent an email about the T-Mobile grant. I thought I saw it.
I
but don't
forwarded it
see
this
it in my
afternoon.
inbox.
I started off by saying, hear ye, hear ye.
No, maybe that's why I deleted it.
So if you can do a keyword search for hear ye, hear ye, it'll pop up.
All right.
But I can send it.
Thank you. That would be easy. Any reports?
Bobby, any report? Tomorrow, one of these days, they're having another talk with our potential or future software provider for the still a next year project that Thursday. So we're still working on that. The electrical outage went well. The projects both got done. Took 3 hours and 50
I
minutes.
saw the pictures.
Yeah. And that sort of stuff. We may be looking at having another well cleaned. So our well houses, last year we had the one in the park cleaned, and we'll come back. That's kind of something we should program into that reserve fund type thing. Is that every 30 these wells, because the water's so hard and it's so hard on this equipment, that I think that every 3 year, we do the sewer mains, a fourth of the town each year or whatever. I think we need to start doing our wells that way. That way they'll last longer, because every time they go 5 years, it's like, oh no, we gotta completely redo this, and I'll pull those invoices for you, because it's just, the only thing scarier is that oiler. Those bills I couldn't understand either. But, so other than that, I wouldn't report, but I will send out the electric or the utility rate thing I did, and if I get that 15-year project thing you've done, and if there's anything else in that grant, I'll gladly help you. If you'd like me to do anything, I'm to work it out, I'm sure.
So 2 comments / questions, and this is just for general. Can you send an email about waste management? Are they asking
So-
for us to set a date?
Thank you. I do need to talk about that. They did ask about, because when we did the contract 10 years ago, because we did 2 5-year contracts, so 10 years ago, they were one of the bidders on that, and Tri-County was, and Tri-County won. So 5 years ago, we bid it out again, or 4 years ago, and it was Average Joe. He wants to be at the 421 meeting. So if you're interested in getting a update on the services offered by Waste Management, just if there's a consensus, we'll let them know. But yeah, I did forward that out so you can think about it. I forgot to put that down here. So I don't see any harm in listening to it if you limit them on time. Well, I only say that because one year we had already agreed to buy something for the sewer plant, and there's a guy from Colorado came, and we'd listen to him. It was over almost 2 hours. He gave us his full presentation, even though he wasn't getting to work. And so I would say on Waste Management, unless you're really serious about switching, tell them we got 15, 20 minutes.
All I know is we got the email, just want to check up on it. I know there was a heated Facebook discussion on disappointed people with Tri-County Waste, so I'm sure they would be interested in attending that meeting.
So, just so we're clear, 421 is the day that he's asking to be at our meeting. That'd be fine with you all? Yeah? great?
Yeah, we would hate to have heated Facebook discussions. So that'll end all those, I'm sure.
Was it because of
That
that,
address it, like if we address it, right, like we had.
do you think it was that posting I put out on behalf of Tri-County that started that discussion?
Well, no, I mean, that's different, like if you have a mess, well, I mean, it's different.
Okay,
It wasn't.
I wasn't me,
No,
alright.
no, and then the second comment, I did have, a few people reach out that they would like to see less of the ramp and more of you, so.
Oh, I see how it is.
I have a small but vocal fan club.
So I don't know,
Which one of the 6 people was saying that?
if you could adjust the camera out, if you could.
Hey, I am thinking about moving the camera from that back to where it used to
When you
be,
get back out.
so that you can get a better view of the commission. Just so you know that I was gonna mention that. And we're switching from a laptop to a desktop because I think it's gonna be more reliable. Is anyone here an audio expert on this stuff? At least cabling's down here? No one? All right. And I have nothing else then.
All right, I just want to remind us that we signed up to do some homework specifically for the next meeting on the parks. I think Bob's really gonna do most of the work on the sidewalk for getting estimates on Second Street, possible things up on the walking path. But let's try to get some work done on the prioritizing park thing for next time, please. That's it. I would
Entertain them?
entertain a motion, you know, the saddest motion of the night.